Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 14th of October, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I am back after a 2-month hiatus of the refuel. I know I originally said 2 months ago before I went on holiday that I would try to do refuels while I was on holiday, and obviously that did not happen. So it's been now over 2 months, I think, since I did the last refuel, and honestly, it's been weird, but also good. You guys remember in May I did like that 2.5 week cold turkey break of crypto where I basically didn't look at anything crypto for 2.5 weeks. I didn't check Twitter, I didn't check Discord, nothing like that. But this time, while I was traveling around in Europe for 2 months, I didn't do that. It was not a cold turkey break. I was still active on Twitter and Discord and other kind of social media stuff, but I wasn't doing refuels, obviously. And I had a lot of people ask me, when's the refuel coming? When's the next episode coming? Because there obviously has been a lot of FUD over the last couple of months lobbied at Ethereum. Nothing out of the, I guess, like ordinary. We're always used to dealing with FUD, but I think a lot of people realized, or maybe kind of thought to themselves, wow, I'd really love to hear, Anthony's take on this, or I'd really love to have Anthony kind of tell me why this is wrong or why this is right, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I guess that's the whole point of why I do this, right? Like I try to educate you guys in various different ways. I try to make sure that you have the, I guess, knowledge that you need in order to basically not just fight back against the FUD if that's what you're so inclined to do, but also realize what is FUD, what isn't, what makes sense, what doesn't, and so on and so forth. But there is a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover from the last couple months that I want to cover today. Don't know how long this episode is going to go for. Probably a while, because I've got a list in front of me. It's not that long of a list, but like each topic that I'm looking at in front of me, I'm thinking to myself, wow, okay, this is like a whole refuel in of itself. So we'll see how long we go for today. But first off, you can skip this part. There'll be timestamps, obviously. You can skip this part, but I did want to discuss a bit about the last 2 months, the trip that I was on, because a lot of you have asked about this, and I said that I would cover it in the video. So really just the TLDR is that for 2 months, my fiance and I traveled around Western Europe. Really, we didn't go to Eastern Europe or anything like that. We spent half of the time in Italy, but essentially what we did was we started off in London. Then we went to Amsterdam, Berlin, Prague, Zurich, Milan, Venice, Florence, Cinque Terre, Rome, and Catania. So that was the whole trip there. And people asked me what we enjoyed most. I think number one on our list was Zurich in Switzerland. We did outside of Zurich as well. We did Thun or Thun. I can't remember how to pronounce it exactly. And a few other small pockets around Switzerland, but Zurich was like the home base there. And we really just enjoyed it. I think that the number one reason we enjoyed it so much maybe was because there wasn't as many tourists there as there was in other places that we had gone to, because Zurich is quite expensive. So naturally people will only go there if they can afford it. And yeah, I mean, if you can afford it, definitely go there. It is absolutely amazing. Like just the fact that we stayed in a hotel that was about a 10-minute walk away from the lake there, the main Lake Zurich there. And we went on the boat tours like a bunch of different times because it was just so beautiful. We went on during the day. We went on when the sun was setting, and we had good weather. We had good weather for basically the whole trip. I think it rained like 2 or 3 times out of the 60 days that we were traveling. So it was amazing to basically have that weather, especially in Zurich there. But Amsterdam was definitely a very close second. We had been to Amsterdam before 2 years ago for Dev Connect in Amsterdam. I went there and my fiance tagged along, but it wasn't really a holiday back then. It was kind of conference things and we didn't really get to enjoy it. But this time around, we enjoyed it much more thoroughly. We have a good friend that lives there that was basically our tour guide. He got us to ride bikes this time, which is an interesting experience in Amsterdam. But yeah, I would say Zurich and Amsterdam definitely 1 and 2 in terms of what we enjoyed most out of the trip here. Now, as I said, we spent half of the time in Italy, and you can see here we went to basically all of the major places in Italy. We ended in Catania, which is in Sicily. Catania was fun. It was a different vibe because, like, obviously, it being in the south of Italy, for anyone who knows Italy, it is very different in terms of, I guess, like the vibe. Like that's the way to put it, right? In terms of the vibe compared to other parts of Italy. But like everywhere that we went seemed to have its own vibe in Italy specifically. Like for example, Milan, because it's so close to the rest of the rest of Western Europe, it is definitely a lot more modernized, right? It's definitely a lot more modern. It definitely feels like your regular city. Venice, I mean, Venice is its own thing altogether, right? Like it's literally a city built on the water, and you really feel that when you're there. You know, Amsterdam obviously has its canals and everything, but it's definitely very different to Venice in that Amsterdam is not built on the actual water. It is built on land that has water running through it, and then obviously some parts of the Netherlands and Amsterdam, they reclaimed a bunch of the ocean and built on that. But it's very different to Venice in that with Venice, it's literally built on the ocean there, and the vibe because of that is very unique. Florence had its own vibe. Obviously, Florence is known for its time during the Renaissance. A lot of obviously art and history there. Cinque Terre was amazing. As someone who loves hiking, like I absolutely love hiking, we did a lot of hikes around Cinque Terre. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically 5 small towns that have a train running along the coast from La Spezia. So we stayed in La Spezia and then we went to the different towns. You can hike between the towns. We did that, absolutely loved it. And then Rome, of course, is just Rome. I mean, like it's just so much to do there, so much history. And then as I said, Catania in the south in Sicily was a completely different vibe because it's so far away from the rest of Western Europe, relatively speaking. I mean, not that far, but in terms of like cultural influences, is definitely far there. But yeah, the whole trip was, as I said, was really, really great. We really enjoyed it. It was a holiday. It was not something for work. It was no conferences or anything like that. We met up with a bunch of friends while we were over there, which made the trip that much more special. And then the funny thing is that the only thing I think I did that was crypto related was that in Berlin, I went to the original building that was the building that the Ethereum network was launched out of all those years ago. So essentially, it was just a piece of Ethereum history that I wanted to experience for myself. But other than that, yeah, it was just all basically a holiday. But I think, that basically covers most of it there. If you guys have any other questions you want to ask me, feel free to ask me in the Discord about that. But I think this is the perfect time to essentially give a heads up that there'll be more travel coming up for me. So obviously DevCon is taking place next month. I will be traveling to Bangkok for that. I think the dates that I'm going to be there is like November 9th to the 18th or something like that, because there's going to be like the side events and the main DevCon conference and the Bankless Summit, which I'm speaking at. So yeah, I think there won't be a refuel during that period either. And then in January, I'm going to Japan with some friends for like 2 weeks, I think. So don't know the dates yet. Haven't confirmed the dates on that yet. But yeah, those are the two, like over the next few months, 2 times when the refuel will be on hiatus again. But until then, we're going to be basically back to our regularly scheduled programming here. I think except for this Wednesday, I'm going to probably just do an episode on Thursday. Going forward, it'll be, in the following weeks, it'll be like the Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence of refuels. And I'll try not to miss any as I usually do here. And then, yeah, I'll continue during the holiday period as well, all through December and everything like that, because there is just so much happening, so much to cover. It definitely feels like the market wants to heat up again as well, but I'm going to talk about the market stuff a little bit later, and that of course obviously whenever that heats up, the whole ecosystem heats up. But yeah, I think that's it on the personal side of things. I want to move into everything that I missed over the last couple of months with regards to Ethereum. Now, I have a list in front of me, as I said to you guys. I'm going to work through this list in no particular order, to be honest, because of the fact that like everything's just going to kind of link together as I talk about it. But the first thing I wanted to start with here is basically some, I guess, like big piece of FUD that was like a piece of FUD for a couple of weeks within the Ethereum ecosystem that tends to rear its head like every now and again for various different reasons. And this has got to do with the Ethereum Foundation. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Ethereum Foundation is an organization within the Ethereum community. It was the original foundation set up to launch Ethereum, do the ICO, so on and so forth, but has since become essentially, I guess, like this pool of money that funds various different things in the Ethereum ecosystem. That's probably the best way to describe them. And they've had this mandate as an organization since, I believe, the original presentation was given back in 2019 at DevCon Osaka in October by AR, the current head of the EF. She basically gave this presentation that the EF wanted to do what's called, or partake in what's called a subtraction philosophy. And what this means is that the Ethereum Foundation doesn't want to be this big centralized entity that has overbearing, I guess, like power on Ethereum. They want to be just one entity among many that are contributing to the Ethereum ecosystem in various different ways. And I think that 5 years on, probably exactly 5 years on from when AF first made that presentation, the the Ethereum Foundation has actually achieved that goal like completely. I actually think that they've achieved that goal to as much as they can achieve it, and I think that strategy has worked quite well. That's my personal opinion on this. But then, of course, you've got the other side of the fence, which is basically saying, well, by the Ethereum Foundation doing this and by taking a back seat, essentially what's happened is that Ethereum is lacking like a central narrative, or Ethereum is lacking a central kind of North Star, or Ethereum is lacking marketing and PR and strategy and so on and so forth coming from the Ethereum Foundation. But to this, I say that is not what the EF is. That is actually not in the EF's DNA at all. At this point in time, for the EF to do that sorts of stuff, it would actually have to completely change the makeup of the organization in order to focus on that. Now, in saying that, what the EF could do is that they could fund these different organizations using the money that they have to do this. So, for example, they could, give $5 million as a grant, because they give these grants out to various different projects within the Ethereum community. They could give a $5 million grant out to a new organization that is solely focused on marketing and strategy and PR, rather than doing it themselves. And that would be a much better use of the EF's resources than trying to get the EF to essentially change their mandate that they've been, I guess, like building within, or I guess confined within for the last 5 years. Because it's just not going to work. It's just not in their DNA. It's basically trying to change the entire, I guess, like structure of the organization just to focus on something that they haven't been bred or haven't been, I guess, designed to focus on. So that's my general view on the Ethereum Foundation, Ethereum Foundation's role within the Ethereum ecosystem. Now, in saying that, of course, you have the fact that the EF could be doing more in various different ways. Like, there is a criticism that the Ethereum Foundation isn't as transparent as it can be. And I agree with that to some extent, where essentially the Ethereum Foundation can be more transparent around what they're using the money for, when they're actually going to be selling ETH, and what for, what their budget is, so on and so forth. And they are making moves there, making strides there to be more transparent with that sort of stuff. And then there are people saying, well, the Ethereum handle on Twitter is owned by the Ethereum Foundation and it's barely used for anything. It has millions of followers and they barely use it for anything. So, why don't we start using that and start using it to promote various different Ethereum projects? But then that I get the point. I get why people want this to happen, but at the same time, you start opening up questions around, okay, well, who's going to do that, right? Who manages the Ethereum Foundation account to do that? Okay, is that person subject to guidelines around what they can and can't post? Okay, well, they probably are. Well, then we have to go on from that and stay on that topic and basically say, okay, well, what are the conflicts of interest that this person has? Like, are they going to promote certain projects over other ones? What are they interested in? Maybe this person doesn't like DeFi, but loves a lot of the stuff happening within SocialFi. Are they going to be promoting SocialFi more than DeFi? And then it becomes a game of everyone just complaining. It's like, oh, why isn't the Ethereum account on Twitter promoting my project or promoting my favorite thing? Or why aren't they talking about meme coins and so on and so forth? So I think the Ethereum Foundation people, or the people that are, I guess, like making the decisions there, have already thought a lot about this and come to the conclusion that it's much better for the Ethereum Twitter account to not get involved with this sorts of stuff, because it just opens up a Pandora's box of shit, really, that I don't think the Ethereum Foundation and the Ethereum community or the ecosystem would necessarily want to deal with there. Then, of course, you have the people within the Ethereum Foundation, of which there are hundreds of these people within the Ethereum Foundation working on various different things. Obviously, there's the public-facing people that you all know, Vitalik, AR, Justin Drake, Dan Crad, like Danny Ryan before. I mean, Danny Ryan actually has essentially, I guess, like semi-retired from the Ethereum ecosystem or the crypto ecosystem now. That was something that happened while I was away. I'm sure you guys all saw that. But you know what I'm saying here. Like the people who are known within the community, who are very active, who have a following within the community, and people know that they work within the Ethereum Foundation or at the Ethereum Foundation here. But then there are hundreds of other people that work there as well and work within the organization that people have no idea who they are, right? So the question people were posing on Twitter was like, okay, well, why isn't Vitalik being more bullish on DeFi? Or the EF hates DeFi and doesn't think ETH should be valuable, and so on and so forth. But this is an opinion based on nothing, really. It seems to be a narrative that was pushed, and I don't understand why this was a thing. I think when it comes to Vitalik, personally, he would rather see more sustainable things built within the crypto ecosystem, and I totally agree with that. I've been tooting that horn myself for many years now. I would rather see much more sustainable things being built and thrive within the ecosystem rather than just having the same Ponzi's and gambling going on all the time. There's nothing wrong with that, but when it becomes the main thing that we focus on, then what are we even doing here? Like, we're trying to build a better and more inclusive financial system. We're not just trying to rebuild a casino, and that shouldn't be the main thing. That shouldn't be the main focus of what we're building here, at least in my view. I think that's Vitalik's view as well. Vitalik has most of his net worth in ETH, so obviously he thinks ETH should be valuable, otherwise he wouldn't keep most of his net worth in ETH, because then if ETH goes down, his net worth goes down, and it doesn't really make any sense for him to keep it in ETH. If he thought that, if he didn't think ETH was valuable, he could put his money into anything else and be better off, based on his own beliefs here. And if the Ethereum developers or core developers didn't believe that ETH should be valuable, or that ETH's economics should be, strong, or should be worked on, or should be improved upon, they wouldn't have delivered things like proof of stake. They wouldn't have delivered the merge. They wouldn't have delivered EIP 1559. They wouldn't be thinking about other things that to shore up Ethereum's monetary policy and ETH's economics and so on and so forth. So I think that when people make generalizations about organizations that have hundreds of people within them, they really need to take a step back and realize that people have different opinions on things. Not everyone's going to like what they like, and I think that's okay. I think there's nothing wrong with that. So that's basically a summary of, I think, a lot of the stuff that was talked about within the community over the last couple of months with regards to the Ethereum Foundation. And just to summarize what I've said basically is that I don't believe the Ethereum Foundation should change what it's doing today. I don't believe that they should change their mandate. I don't believe that they should try and be something that they're not, because it's just not in their DNA. For them to do that, for them to change what they are today, they would have to reshape the entire organization. If there is an appetite to do that within the Ethereum Foundation leadership, maybe they do end up doing that, but I think it's a much better use of their resources for them to fund organizations that are doing the things that people want to see, such as more PR and marketing and strategy around Ethereum. But at the same time, Ethereum is a decentralized ecosystem. Like, it's literally in Ethereum's DNA not to have a central coordination mechanism for it, and I don't think that's going to change. It's the same with Bitcoin. Like, I don't understand why people talk about Ethereum as if it's different to Bitcoin in that respect. They're the same thing. There's no Bitcoin. There's not even a Bitcoin Foundation. I mean, there used to be, but it was useless. It did nothing. So there's no like central, I guess, like organization or central party or person that dictates what Bitcoin is. It's a, I guess, consensus within the community that they want Bitcoin to be digital gold. And then there are lots of people who don't agree with that have kind of forked off of that, because they want Bitcoin, they still wanted Bitcoin to be a payments network. And then beyond that, there are people now that want Bitcoin to be more than just like a dumb rail for BTC, the asset. They want to do NFTs on there. They want to do smart contracts on there. So you have all of this kind of stuff going on in the Bitcoin community, but they've managed to coalesce around this digital gold store of value narrative for BTC. They've managed to find shared values and shared missions together, and that's kind of their North Star there. The same is true for Ethereum. The Ethereum ecosystem doesn't need the EF to dictate these things. The Ethereum ecosystem has come up with their own things that it values, that it finds a purpose in, and that it wants to keep building towards. I mean, Ethereum's North Star, this is something that's been talked about a lot on Twitter recently. Ethereum's North Star is really the roll-up centric roadmap. That is it, basically. Like, if you want to talk about like the broader North Star for all of crypto, it really is making on-chain as easy to use as possible for as many people and machines as possible. Like, that is the North Star for all of on-chain crypto. There are just different implementations towards doing that. Ethereum's implementation is the roll-up centric roadmap. It's been like that for 4 years now. We've been executing on it beautifully. It's been growing so nicely that I don't understand why people are now saying, oh, Ethereum needs a change in strategy, or Ethereum is dying, or Ethereum is going in the wrong direction. How is that even like a take when Ethereum is continuing to grow? It is the ecosystem where by far most of the innovation in the entire crypto ecosystem comes out of, and ETH as an asset is still worth so much. It's worth 300 billion, guys. Like, ETH as an asset is not going to move like your regular 10 million market cap meme coin. Like, it's not, it just makes no sense to compare the two. It would be like comparing penny stocks to Apple or Nvidia stock. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know why people do this outside of financial incentives of trying to pump their own bags. It just doesn't make much sense there. But those are my general views on the Ethereum Foundation and their place within the ecosystem and what I think that they should and shouldn't be doing. I do think that the people within the Ethereum Foundation can take a more active role within the community. Vitalik has tried to do that recently, but Vitalik is doing so many different things. We can't expect him to just be the guy that does absolutely everything. So as a community, we need people to step up. I try to do my own thing. There are others in the community that try to do their own thing. And that's basically it. That's a decentralized ecosystem. There is no centralized party coming to tell you what you can and can't do within Ethereum. And that is the beauty of it. That is why we are building Ethereum the way we're building it, is so that anyone can have a voice, anyone can have a say, anyone can get involved. And that is what really keeps me in the ecosystem. The fact that I can freely produce and say whatever I want about Ethereum through the Daily Gwei. I can do whatever I want. No one can stop me from doing it. I can contribute as much as I want. I can go and take a break for 2 months. And go on holiday for 2 months without doing a refuel, and no one is basically dictating what I can and can't do in this ecosystem, which is great. I love that. I love that that's a thing. But yeah, that's the stuff on the EF there. And I think flowing off of the EF generally is talking about things like the social layer within Ethereum. The social layer is essentially, I guess, like, some people find it hard to define, but I don't think it's very hard to define. It's basically just the people, right? It's the people within the ecosystem. It's what the people are doing, what they're saying, what they care about, and what their, I guess, like, what the people's North Star is generally as well. So I think that Ethereum's social layer generally is quite strong. Ethereum's social layer works very well when it is being channeled towards doing things that make Ethereum better, rather than trying to attack other ecosystems. I think that a lot of the maybe, I guess, like, problems over the, I wouldn't even call them problems, but maybe like perceived narrative issues over the last 12 months has come from Ethereum people punching down at, I guess, like, perceived competitors. So for example, there are a bunch of other L1s out there. You've got Solana, Aptos, Sui, Say, so on and so forth. And then I think a mistake that Ethereans, or some Ethereans, not all Ethereans, but a mistake some of the Ethereans within the Ethereum social layer have made is basically punching down at those ecosystems and making fun of them. And what that does is that essentially, and the signal that it sends to people outside of the Ethereum ecosystem is it basically says to them, well, look, the Ethereans are talking about these ecosystems. They must feel threatened by them. They must feel like these ecosystems can actually compete with Ethereum. So let's go pay attention to that. And I think that's a big mistake that the Ethereum social layer has made over the last 12 months specifically. And I hope that that's something that people can learn from and understand, that you should never punch down. If you want to, you should punch up. Like, for example, the Ethereum ecosystem should be punching up at Bitcoin. In my mind, Ethereum competes with Bitcoin. Ethereum layer 1 competes with Bitcoin. ETH competes with BTC. I think that the layer 2s compete with other layer 1s, the ones that are the monolithic L1s, the ones that are optimizing for execution. But I don't think that we as a community should even be punching down to those other L1s either. I think we should just, like, let them do their own thing. Don't give them free marketing. Don't give them free airtime. Don't talk about them as if you're threatened by them. Like, if they're going to succeed, they're going to succeed. If they're not going to succeed, they're not going to succeed. Let them do their own thing. We should feel confident enough in the Ethereum mission and in the Ethereum vision to just keep promoting what's cool about Ethereum, what's good about Ethereum, what we're working on within the Ethereum ecosystem. There's no need to go out there and FUD other ecosystems or talk about them or send the message out and send the signals out to the world that we as Ethereum social layer feel threatened by these ecosystems, because I certainly don't. Like, I don't feel threatened at all by these other ecosystems. I feel like we still have billions of people to onboard on chain, and over optimizing on the potentially maybe a couple 100,000 active on-chain human users is ridiculous. Like, why are we focusing on the absolutely tiny minuscule pie that we have today? Why are we fighting over that rather than trying to onboard billions more people? That should be what we're doing. We shouldn't be fighting over the existing user base, which is very, very small, guys. Like, it's absolutely tiny, and we're fighting over scraps by fighting over them. We need to be essentially scaling this up as much as we possibly can across, like, everything, like L1s, L2s, whatever it is. And as the Ethereum ecosystem, we should be producing the best user experience, the best on-chain user experience possible for these people, while still respecting what makes a blockchain valuable to begin with, which is obviously decentralization, censorship resistance, credible neutrality, all that good stuff there. So I think that as the social layer of Ethereum, which encompasses everyone within Ethereum, as I said, it's the people of Ethereum, we should definitely focus on more on what makes Ethereum great and awesome, and less on competitors. Let them compete. Let them try to compete. Let them try to grow their ecosystem. Let them do their own thing. They're either going to win or lose based on their own merits. Whether you talk about them or not not on Twitter is really not going to make a difference in terms of whether they're going to win or lose. But I do think that punching down to them and making fun of them and constantly talking about them gives them a bit of a leg up, at least over the short to medium term. So it's essentially handicapping ourselves for what? Like, so you can make fun of them? Doesn't work, I don't think. And that's why I've avoided doing it for a long time now. Well, one of the reasons. The other reason is that I just don't think it's productive. I just don't think that it's worth calling out things. The truth comes out eventually, and I'd rather just focus on what makes Ethereum great and what makes Ethereum awesome generally here. So that's the social layer stuff there. Now, I wanted to move on to, I guess, like speaking of what makes Ethereum awesome, the rollup centric roadmap, the layer 2 roadmap. That's another thing over the last couple of months that people have been questioning. They've been like, oh, what if Ethereum had made the wrong choice by going with the rollup centric roadmap? What if we just re-centralize efforts into scaling L1 Ethereum and forget about the rollups? This, to me, isn't necessarily FUD, but it's just like a really, like, odd thing for people to be thinking, considering that the rollup-centric roadmap is succeeding. Like, I would sympathize with people thinking this if rollups were failing, but they're not. They're at all-time highs in terms of usage. The TVL on rollups keeps increasing. Yes, we keep getting more layer 2s and more rollups that may or may not succeed, but like that's the whole point of the rollup-centric roadmap, to let the free market do Ethereum's scaling for it, and then the best solutions will win out over the long term, and we'll have maybe a handful of these solutions that actually end up succeeding. So, like, as I said, if the rollup-centric roadmap was actually failing, then I would be more more partial to these people's arguments, but it's not. It's doing the exact opposite of failing. So I think that the reason that people are saying this, and I think there are a lot of people saying this as a way to just fight Ethereum, but the people saying this seriously, I think they're only saying this because of the fact that we're in the, I guess, like awkward growing phase of the rollup-centric roadmap right now, where not everything is figured out. There are still things that are very, very clunky. Interoperability is a big one that still hasn't been kind of figured out. A lot of solutions still haven't been delivered. The scale hasn't, the global scale that we talk about, the millions of TPS, whatever, hasn't been delivered yet, and it still looks like there's a long journey ahead of us. But that's just a mismatch of timelines then. That's got nothing to do with the rollup-centric roadmap being a success or failure. It's got to do with the mismatched timelines. If you look out 5 to 10 years and you can't envision the rollup-centric roadmap fixing all of the current issues it has and basically reunifying everything into one, I guess, like, or into something that feels like one chain for users when they're using it through a wallet or any other interface here, then really you're not thinking big enough, because just hyper-focusing on the short term is not something that I think is productive, because it's just going to lead you to thinking that things are going badly, when in reality, if you just look out 1 to 2 years even, and you see a lot of these solutions being developed and being deployed, then you'll see that these things are being worked on. All of the issues that exist today aren't going to exist in the future. But if you do think that the Ethereum's rollup-centric roadmap, like truly think that Ethereum's rollup-centric roadmap, Ethereum's layer 2 roadmap is the wrong one, and if you do truly believe that scaling the L1 is the only way to scale a blockchain, there are plenty of other ecosystems out there for you. You don't, I guess, like, I don't want to say that you don't belong in Ethereum, but if you don't actually buy into the Ethereum vision, then you're wasting your time within Ethereum. It's like if I don't like iPhones, I'm not going to use an iPhone, I'm going to go use an Android phone. Like, why would I say to myself, I fucking hate using iPhones, but I'm going to use one anyway? I don't have to. I have a choice here. So it's just weird to me that people sometimes act like they're locked into the Ethereum ecosystem. It's like, I fucking hate the rollup-centric roadmap. It sucks. It's so fragmented. It was a mistake. But like, okay, cool, bro. Like, you don't have to stay in Ethereum if you don't like it. Like, you can go to somewhere else. And I'd love for you to stay in Ethereum. I'd love for you to understand that the rollup-centric roadmap is a long-term thing, and it is already playing out really nicely. But if you don't believe in it anymore, or never believed in it, and you just want to see the L1 scale, go to these other ecosystems. They will welcome you, and you'll feel better. You'll feel at home there. There's no use staying somewhere where you don't feel at home. It's just really bad for your mental health generally too. So I think that people saying stuff about the rollup-centric roadmap not being the right path for Ethereum have it completely wrong. Now, I did put out a tweet about this actually the other day, where I basically said that if people understood the history of the rollup-centric roadmap and the history of layer 2s, they would probably understand why Ethereum chose this path. And I want to give a brief history here. I don't have any prepared notes for this. This is basically all from memory here, but I want to give you guys a brief kind of history of why Ethereum chose the rollup centric roadmap. So this goes back all the way to at least 2016, I would say, where the first discussions, or at least the first loud discussions around how to scale Ethereum were being had, because there were a lot of discussions in Bitcoin land about how to scale Bitcoin. And obviously the Lightning Network was Bitcoin's premier solution at the time, which used the technology of state channels. Now, we basically brought this into Ethereum as various different projects that were working on state channels, but they had their extreme limitations. They couldn't be used for anything more than simple payments, and even within the simple payments context, they required a lot of supporting infrastructure, and there were a bunch of security holes associated with them. So then Ethereum researchers started working on things that looked a bit better than state channels, things that could do more than payments, things that could do native smart contracts at a secondary layer, at a layer 2. And that gave birth to something called Plasma. Now, Plasma went through many iterations, but again, it suffered from a few key things that basically made it unscalable and relatively insecure. And then Plasma essentially, and this was I think in 2017 and 2018 mostly, but then Plasma I guess like didn't die straight away. There were a few things I guess like being delivered at the time. There were a few projects working on this. Most notably was Amise Go. There was also, I believe, I think Fuel was working on Plasma back in the day. There was also a Loom network, I believe, as well, was working on it. These are some really ancient projects now, but there were people working on Plasma-based scaling solutions for Ethereum. But then we started kind of evolving past that, and what became the spiritual successor to Plasma was rollups, was optimistic rollups first, and then ZK rollups later. The first company to be formed around this was called Plasma Group, which later became Optimism, which later became OP Labs, the team behind the OP stack, behind Optimism mainnet. Base uses the OP stack. Everyone knows Optimism, right? So they started off as Plasma Group. They were working on Plasma first. Then they, I guess, pivoted to optimistic rollups, and they've been working on that ever since. Now, this is just layer 2 scaling. There was also a plan to scale L1 through what was called sharding at the time. Now, this had been on the roadmap from a very, very long time ago, I think from like 2015 or 2016, for Ethereum L1 to scale via sharding, and some remnants of that roadmap still exist within the Ethereum protocol today, such as the 32 ETH max validator limit, because we basically wanted to have a lot of validators on the network. We have a million plus validators on the network today in order to allow sharding to work, but the thing is that somewhere along the way, I can't remember the exact date, we being the Ethereum researcher community, not me, but like the Ethereum research community, essentially looked at sharding and was like, this is just really, really difficult to make work, and it is going to take forever to ship. It is also going to result in very similar issues to just having multiple L2s in terms of like interoperability, and it looked like it wasn't going to be secure. Now, there are other chains out there that claim to be able to do sharding. I haven't looked into many of them, but essentially sharding as it existed back then was abandoned. Now that form of sharding later became known as execution sharding, and then there was something that came along later called data sharding, or dank sharding, or proto dank sharding, which is actually what was delivered on the network eventually in the forms of blobs. So I guess that is like a very brief overview of the L1 scaling and L2 scaling in terms of like the main things that have been happening on both of those layers over the course of Ethereum's life, and how we got to where we are today. So essentially, we went through a lot of iterations of how to scale various different things while also preserving what makes Ethereum great. The reason we don't scale up L1 by throwing more hardware at it is because we want to make it so that the L1 can be easily verified by consumer hardware. People can run their own full nodes. People can become part of the consensus, whether that be under proof of work or proof of stake, from home. Basically, for hobbyists, for people who want to do this on their own hardware, rather than doing it in massive data centers that cost so much money to run and that are very inaccessible to like 99% of the planet. That has been Ethereum's kind of, I guess, North Star when it comes to scaling, preserving that while obviously scaling up Ethereum here. And that's why today we have rollups. They are the best of all worlds. You can do anything you want. Essentially, rollups are best thought of as just basically more Ethereum block space. Essentially, you have Ethereum L1 block space, you have Ethereum L2 block space. It's the same thing. You go on Base, right? For example, you go on Arbitrum 1, they're both EVM chains. They feel exactly the same as Ethereum L1, except you get cheaper fees and faster transactions. But it's the same experience, right? Like, you're still using the EVM, you're using similar or basically the same apps. You're just getting a much cheaper price as well as faster transactions. Now, of course, there are differences in that these L2s are behind multi-sigs. They have various different security properties. They are not strictly equivalent to L1 Ethereum block space, but they are still Ethereum because the L2, the roll-up contracts and the DA, for at least for Arbitrum 1 and Base and a few others out there, live on Ethereum. So they're still part of Ethereum. They just have different, I guess, security properties. Just like a smart contract for a DeFi protocol can have a multi-sig on it on Ethereum L1, same is true for these L2s here. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of where Ethereum kind of came from in terms of scaling and why we went down the path of the roll-up centric roadmap and why we still go down that path and why that path, it seems to be the one, or at least I think it is, the one that is going to succeed long term. And it seems to be something that everyone is rallying around as well these days, which is great to see. There are a few holdouts still, and there are a few people who have kind of changed their mind on things, I think simply due to price action for some reason. But yeah, I think that Ethereum is still on the correct path with the roll-up centric roadmap. Nothing has changed in that regard. So hopefully that gives you a bit more context there. Now, next topic to talk about, and if I'm talking about ETH, the asset, and ETH's value accrual properties and everything like that, which has been another big topic within the community over the last couple of months because of the fact that ETH has relatively underperformed a bunch of other assets. And I say that because it's like, well, I mean, ETH has still vastly outperformed most of the assets out there that it's worth comparing it to. I don't think it makes any sense at all to compare ETH, a $300 billion asset, to a meme coin with a $10 million market cap. Like, do people understand how much of a difference there is there? Like, for example, if you have a $10 million market cap asset and you put $1 million into that asset, you are going to send that market cap skyrocketing, because if you try to market buy $1 million worth of a $10 million asset, there is not going to be enough liquidity there for you to do that. So you're going to send the price skyrocketing because people are going to be like, wow, there's this massive guy trying to buy, a massive whale trying to buy so much of this coin that I'm holding. I'm not going to sell it here. I'm going to like move my price up here. And then and as I said, even if you try to market buy, there's not going to be any liquidity there. So you're going to quickly send the price of that asset skyrocketing because it is you're buying 10% of the entire market cap. Now, if you buy $1 million worth of ETH, you're not going to do anything to the price. That's like nothing. Like, ETH is $300 billion. You are buying 0.0001%, I think, or something like that of the asset, or even less than that. So you're not going to make a dent in it. So it's not even worth comparing those things. That's why I say when you look at things as like a comparative market cap, that's a better way of doing it. Now, of course, ETH has underperformed BTC over the last 2 years. I think it's down like 50% from the high 2 years ago, which may seem bad on the surface, but it is a vast improvement over what Ethereum, what ETH did against BTC last cycle, where it went down like 90% against BTC from its top to bottom there. And also at the same time, I don't really think that ETH against BTC is influenced so much by crypto specific things. I think it is more influenced by global, I guess, liquidity and global risk appetite rather than with, crypto specific things. Because I think for the most part, crypto natives, they seem to have like a core ETH and BTC bag, but then a lot of them like to take a lot of risks. So they just end up using a lot of their money to buy all this other stuff like altcoins, meme coins, celeb coins, whatever you want to talk about. And at the market caps that ETH and BTC are at this point, $300 billion, $1.2 trillion, they need more than retail money to move them in any substantial way. They need big money to move them. And obviously, a driver of that is the ETFs. And of course, BTC ETFs have had more inflows than the ETH ETFs, but I have talked about this in the past where essentially they launched different times. The BTC ETFs launched in the middle of a massive run up on BTC. The ETH ETFs launched in basically the middle of one of the in the middle of a sell off, right, of everything in July 23rd. Like, July was not a good time for crypto broadly, and that's when the ETH ETF went live. But if we actually look at Farside, the website that I use to track these kind of ETFs and track the inflows here, you can still see that money's been trickling in for the ETH ETFs. If you actually go here and look at all the data from July 23rd till today, the money's been trickling in terms of like net money. It's still been net outflows most days because of the grayscale outflows, but money's still been coming in here. Obviously, BTC has been bringing in more if you go here and look at the amount that's been coming in, but the amounts going out have also been more. So if you actually look at like the net over the last few months, BTC and ETH are very similar in terms of like net flows on the ETFs, because as I said, BTC ETFs have had some pretty big outflow days to offset any of the inflows that it has here. But I do want to make a bit of a meta point about ETFs here that I think I've made before, but it's worth repeating. The ETFs so far seem to have not really attracted, even the BTC ETFs, not really attracted the boomer money or the TradFi money that everyone talked about. And I remember I said this, even back when the BTC ETF was launching, that it would take a while for that money to come in. I think that most of the money that has actually gone into these things has come from crypto native investors, whether they've been retail investors or institutional crypto native investors, and a very little part, maybe 10 to 20% of that money has come from potentially net new money from the money in the TradFi ecosystem that has not touched crypto before. So if that's the case, which I believe it is, from everything that I've seen, it seems to be the case here, then that means that there is still plenty of new institutional money in TradFi money, boomer money, whatever you want to call it, to come into these things. It's just going to take a lot longer than people would have thought, I believe. And on top of that as well, the flows themselves, even though they may seem big on the day-to-day timeframes, if you actually contextualize that, even for BTC, it goes back to what I was saying before in terms of like flows versus market cap. You can see here that the net flow recently on the 11th of October for the BTC ETFs was $253 million. That may seem like a lot of money, but it's not when you're looking at a $1.2 trillion asset, right? And especially because a lot of this stuff is done OTC. A lot of this inventory is already bought on the market and then on-sold later. And then when you look at the way that these products actually do kind of creations and redemptions, and when you look at people playing these products to do the basis trade by going long the ETF, short the non-ETF, or going short the ETF, long the non-ETF, there's just too much going on here to look at these raw numbers to say, oh, look, BTC brought in billions of dollars over the last few weeks. Why is the price of BTC not up more? It doesn't work like that. It is not a one-to-one mapping like that, especially not when these things are traded across so many different avenues. There are so many different people betting on these things, speculating on these things. There is options markets on this. There are futures markets on this. BTC and ETH are not like meme coins that literally exist in a small liquidity pocket on some chain somewhere that has like a $10 million market cap that maybe 100 people have been able to get into. Like they're just very different beasts here. So I think that comparing them is wrong. I think that looking at these raw numbers and drawing any kind of conclusions is wrong. But I will say that over the long term, and long term I'm talking about years here, guys. I'm not talking about like a month or 2 months. I'm talking about years here. Long term, as I've said before, these ETFs do have an impact. But if you're just going to take even a 6-month time period and look at the ETF flows and be like, why is price not going up? That is not going to be a healthy use of your time. That is not going to be something that you're going to get an answer to. It doesn't work like that. It is not that simple. And that's basically most of what I wanted to say around the ETF here and the ETF flows generally. I think maybe the last thing on the ETF was that people will say, well, ETH has had such disappointing flows to the ETF compared to BTC. When are we going to see more ETH getting bought up in these ETFs here? I'll repeat what I said before. They launched at different times in terms of like BTC launching when the market was extremely hot, ETH launching when the market was extremely cold, the ETH ETF launching when the market was extremely cold. So let's give it some more time. Let's see what this looks like in a couple of years from today. I did say that I would do like a year recap once the ETFs, once the ETH ETF had gone live. So I'm actually going to do one in January. We'll do a year recap of the BTC ETFs, and then July of next year, we'll do a year recap of the ETH ETFs. Because I think you have to see these things through different market cycles. You can't just look at them in a vacuum. You can't just look at them in one kind of like 6-month period. You have to look at them over the long term here. You have to look at them through different market cycles. And you also have to contextualize this too. The TradFi investors are still getting used to BTC. They haven't really thought about ETH yet, and they will eventually, but it's going to take a while. I was actually talking to one of the I think I tweeted about this, talking to one of the people who work within this in this industry, within the TradFi ecosystem, and they say whenever they talk to people about Bitcoin, the vast majority, if not all of the people they talk to about Bitcoin have already heard of Bitcoin before. But when they talk about Ethereum, most people haven't even heard of Ethereum, let alone know what Ethereum is. Now, you may see that as bearish. You'll be like, wow, okay, Ethereum is so big, but people haven't even heard of it yet. How is that possible? But I see that as extremely bullish. That means that these people haven't even been exposed to Ethereum before, which means they haven't even thought about buying ETH yet, and they are potential buyers in the future. So I think that alone is extremely bullish for ETH, extremely bullish for Ethereum generally. But as I said, it's going to take a while for all this to play out, because the ETF issuers are still educating these clients about Bitcoin, why they should buy it, why they should allocate to it. And they're also doing ETH. I'm sure you saw the BlackRock slide recently that was shared. I shared it on Twitter. Essentially, BlackRock is showcasing both BTC and ETH, but they're doing it in different ways. They're showcasing BTC as an alternative store of value, as a digital gold, and they're showcasing ETH as a technology platform, the platform to build decentralized applications on. They're not talking about ETH as a store of value yet, but I do believe that eventually they will. It's just right now they don't want to confuse investors. They don't want to cannibalize their products. They want to just basically make a clear delineation between BTC and ETH so that they can sell these products to clients. And at the end of the day, if essentially someone says, okay, well, I can't pick between BTC and ETH, I'm just going to allocate 50% to each of these things, that is a win. Even if ETH isn't being sold as a store of value, if ETH and BTC still get equal representation within a portfolio, then that's a huge win. And even if it's market cap weighted, like 70-30, that's still a big win. Then slowly over time, we can keep educating why we believe ETH is a good store of value, why we believe ETH is a potentially better store of value than BTC. That's going to take a while. It's going to take years, guys. It's not going to happen overnight. So hopefully that clear some things up about the ETFs generally and my thinking around them there. Now, guess springboarding off of that into, I guess, like ETH being a money or being a store of value here. That's another thing that's been discussed over the last few months, especially where people are debating. It's like, okay, well, if ETH's fee revenue is going to remain low for the foreseeable future as Ethereum continues to scale up via L2s, then why is ETH worth what it's worth? Like if we do like a naive PE kind of ratio analysis on ETH as an asset, ETH is stupidly overvalued at $300 billion. It should be worth maybe a few $1 billion, if that. And I would agree with you. If you're just valuing ETH based on its fee revenue, then ETH should not be worth $300 billion. But this is why I keep saying that ETH isn't valued like that. ETH is valued first and foremost on its status as a store of value, as a money. Its fee revenue is a bonus in that context. And I do believe that if we want ETH to be worth trillions of dollars, or if you want any crypto asset to be worth trillions of dollars, it has to be a money. It has to be a store of value. It has to accrue monetary premium. We have complete and undeniable evidence of that with BTC. Bitcoin's fee revenue is pathetic compared to its market cap. It doesn't even do more fee revenue than Ethereum. It doesn't even do more fee revenue than Ethereum. It doesn't even get close to Ethereum if you average it out. Like some days obviously have been bigger days than Ethereum, but if you average it out, it doesn't even get close there. And yet BTC is worth $1.2 trillion. That's because it is viewed as a store of value. It has a monetary premium. And I strongly believe that the only way for any other crypto asset to accrue market cap in the trillions of dollars sustainably, and even in the hundreds of billions of dollars sustainably, is to accrue a monetary premium, is to be a store of value. That's why I am such a big proponent of ETH being that. And I believe when it comes to something being a store of value or accruing a monetary premium, the number one thing you have to do is get that asset into as many people's hands as possible. It doesn't matter if they buy $100 of the asset or $1 million of the asset. What matters is that they have the asset. That's all that matters, I think, in my mind. Now, how do we do that for ETH? Well, ETH can come at this from two different directions, and it can come at it from a direction that BTC can't come from. So if we look at BTC, how does it do it? Well, it basically tells a story, right? It tells the story of BTC being an upgrade to gold, being a digital gold because of such and such reasons. It's more portable, it's secure because of math. It has a $21 million cap, so on and so forth. We all know the Bitcoin story, right? And the more people that buy into that story, the more people buy BTC, and then it just becomes this self-reinforcing thing. And that's why BTC is worth as much as it's worth, and why now it's considered a store of value and a digital gold. So ETH has that as well. Like you can say the same story for ETH. You can say, okay, well, ETH's monetary policy is this. This is it can become deflationary if the fee revenue is high enough. But even if it's not deflationary, it has such a low inflation. Yes, it doesn't have a hard cap, but that's because of the fact that we want ETH to be sustainable into the future. We want to be able to pay validators to secure the network. You know, so on and so forth. There, so you can come at it from the same angle. You can tell the same or similar story as BTC as to why ETH is a store of value, why it's a money, so on and so forth. But then you can come at it from another angle where people use ETH, right? People use ETH on-chain. They use it in the on-chain Ethereum economy. People don't really use BTC that much. Like, yes, they have wrapped versions of BTC where some small percentage of BTC is used within, within Ethereum DeFi, on other chains, whatever. That's not real BTC. It's wrapped BTC. It's IOU, but it's still being used there. But the vast majority of BTC's value doesn't come from that. It comes from the fact that it has that story. It's a belief system, right? ETH has that too. A vast majority of ETH's value comes from that belief system, but it also has the fact that it's used on chain. And that's why I've been a very big proponent of the fact that by scaling Ethereum, we scale ETH. And what I mean by this is that by scaling Ethereum up via L2's or otherwise, we get ETH into the hands of more people, because now more people can access Ethereum. More people can afford Ethereum because fees are cheap now. More people want to use Ethereum because of the fact that transactions are fast. There's more things to do on here. There's more apps because we lowered the fees. We made... we basically have other environments other than the EVM that new developers can come build on and build novel applications on, and so on and so forth. So by expanding and scaling Ethereum, we scale up ETH. That's something that Bitcoin doesn't have. Maybe it'll have that in the future. I doubt it, because it basically defeats a lot of the purpose of its story of being immutable, of being unchanging, of being reliable. Whereas ETH has that story of being reliable and secure. It changes, yes, but I think that's a feature, not a bug. But then on top of that, as I said, you've got the entire on-chain economy that is powered by ETH. ETH is at the heart of the entire, Ethereum economy. It is at Ethereum L1. It is at Ethereum L2s. It is on other L1s as well. It's used there too. Those things on other L1s are IOUs. The only chain that ETH is actually truly decentralized on is Ethereum L1, and potentially a stage 2 decentralized rollup, which none really exists today. So you got to look at it like that as well from a nuanced point of view. But that's my general view on like ETH's value accrual properties. Its use as a money store of value, and then obviously its use within the economy, whether that be staking the asset, whether that be using it as collateral, whether that be restaking it, whether that be using it as money to purchase things like NFTs, whether that be using it as gas. All of those things contribute to ETH's value. That's why ETH is worth what it's worth. But I do believe that over-indexing on ETH's fee revenue is the wrong way to think about ETH's value. It's going to lead people to the wrong conclusions. I think that people need to just accept the fact that for ETH to be valuable, for ETH to be worth trillions of dollars, it needs to be a money. It needs to be a store of value. And there's no negatives here, guys. ETH accruing value there's no negatives to it. It just means that the Ethereum ecosystem gets to grow even more. Like, I don't understand people who are like, well, ETH shouldn't be worth, trillions of dollars. ETH can work, Ethereum, the network can work just fine, even if ETH is worth nothing. Okay, like, maybe that's technically correct, even though there is so much nuance that falls off of that, such as the fact that if ETH is worth very little, then the Ethereum network is very insecure, because the Ethereum network is secured by ETH. But outside of that, like, I don't understand that line of thinking, because the thing is that the less ETH is worth, the less DeFi can grow on Ethereum, the less people are interested in Ethereum, because ETH is not growing as an asset. There's less wealth effect there, less things get funded within the Ethereum ecosystem, and it's just like a negative spiral. So wouldn't you want the positive spiral to be the thing that we optimize for? Wouldn't you want ETH to just go up as much as possible so that the Ethereum ecosystem can grow? At least that's my logic when it comes to these sorts of things, and that's the message I've been trying to push for so long now here. But yeah, that's my general view on ETH as money. There is a lot of more, I guess, like stories to be told there. There's a lot more finessing to be done around ETH's value prop as money, as a store of value. It's going to be done at both like the TradFi layer and within the crypto native economy layer. But at the end of the day, we all know that the best marketing for an asset is for it to go up. We can't force ETH to go up, but we can keep telling the story. We can keep improving Ethereum. We can keep scaling Ethereum so we can scale ETH as well. So yeah. Anyway, moving on to the next topic here. All right, so a related topic to what I was just talking about has got to do with Ethereum's fee revenue. Now, obviously, this has been a big topic of discussion for a little while now, probably since March when blobs were delivered about how Ethereum's fee revenue has gone down a lot since then, and that's bearish for ETH or something like that. Now, I do want to point out a few different things here. Obviously, as I said, in March, blobs went live for the network, which took a load off the network. I think about 20% load off the network that L2's were using on normal L1. They were using call data. Now they're using blobs. So that took a bunch of demand off there. And blobs have since been freed pretty much the whole time because of the fact that blobs aren't in price discovery here. But as with everything, there's a lot of nuance to this. Now, what else happened in March of this year besides the blobs going live? Well, the whole market topped, right? Like BTC topped, ETH topped, everything topped, and everything just like crashed from there and has been basically sideways boring for the better part of of all the months that have followed since March then. Now, of course, we know that most of the, activity that happens on chain has got to do with financial activity, with DeFi activity, and that is extremely sensitive to price movements. If the price is doing nothing, just going sideways, then gas fees are going to be lower because there's just less movement on chain. If the price is being very volatile in either direction, whether it's up or down, gas fees are going to go up. Now, it's not just like the price of ETH, it's not just the price of BTC, it's just the market in general. Like if meme coins are going nuts on Ethereum, then obviously gas fees are going to go up. ETH could be going sideways, but meme coins could be going nuts, price is going to go up. So when I talk about like market activity, it's everything. It's not just ETH and BTC here. So if we contextualize that and say, okay, well, blobs were delivered, reduced fees, and then the market topped and the market's been going sideways, that's why fee revenue has come down for the most part. Because if you actually see over the last few weeks, the market's been heating up again. And of course, L1 fee revenue has gone up. You can see here in the chart, if you actually look at the green bits of this chart on my screen here, you can see that since, September 16th, so about a month now, fee revenue has been the highest it has been on a kind of daily basis since basically June? Yeah, basically June of this year. And I think June of this year, obviously the market was still a little bit active then. But then, it's been kind of down only since then. But then it started picking back up because the market got active again. Now, if you zoom out a bit to the last 365 days of fee revenue, you can see here in March of this year, fee revenue on a daily basis was obviously a lot higher. But you can see that actually on my screen now, you can't see it too well because of the fact that my camera is covering it. If I zoom out I can't have to sign in to zoom out more than this, but I'm trying to make it so that you guys can see this on my screen here. Maybe I'll try and move my camera here. Yeah, I can move my camera up here. So you can see here on the left-hand side that during the period of October 2023 to like March, to December when the market was going nuts, the fees were going up the whole time. Fees were trending up. But then, of course, fees went down again because the market cooled off a little bit after the BTC ETF went live. But then from basically like February to mid-March, the 6 weeks there, the market went nuts again. And that's why fee revenue went nuts again. And then since then, obviously, things have come down. We had a little bit of a spike in June, but things have generally been down here. But now the market's hitting up again, so fees have gone up again on L1, as you can see on the right-hand side of the chart here. Now, of course, my prediction is if the market keeps heating up and we go into another bull market or another bull cycle of part of this market again, then fee revenue is just going to keep trending up again on the L1. And this is because that, yes, people have moved to the L2s. People are using the L2s. L2s have onboarded a lot of new users, and L1 Ethereum probably hasn't onboarded that many new users because it is still expensive to use. Even at 1 Gwei gas prices, it's still expensive to use compared to the L2. But that doesn't mean that L1 isn't going to be used. It doesn't mean that L1 is just going to be dead forever. No, not at all. L1 is used by various different, entities within the ecosystem, and there are plenty of people and plenty of companies and enterprises and entities that don't care about gas fees, guys. They will happily pay $100 of gas fees. They don't care. Not to mention all of the MEV stuff that's happening as well all of the time on L1 here. Now, that's just the first part of what I wanted to talk about when it comes to fee revenue here. The second part, which is of course got to do with blobs. So this is the blobs dashboard from Hill Dobby on Dune Analytics here, and you can see, as I said, blobs, if they're above the green line, that means that they're in price discovery. They haven't been in price discovery since they went live, basically. And you can see here what this looks like. But they have been pretty high up and basically stayed pretty high up, like towards this green line here for quite a while now, basically. And that's because the L2s keep getting more usage. The L2s keep scaling up. They're using more blobs, more L2s are coming online, and eventually this is going to saturate here. Now, of course, people want to increase the number of blobs on the network, and they want to keep scaling up blobs, and that's what we should be doing, because when blobs go into price discovery, it represents the same issue as L1, normal L1 fees going into price discovery. Essentially what that means is that L2 fees are going to start going up once blobs saturate, because the L2s have to pay more for data, because the blob fee market kicks in, and then, of course, the fees will be passed on to the users at the L2s, and then the users will have a worse experience here. So we should not be optimizing for that at all. What we should be optimizing for is increasing the blob scalability as much as possible while preserving the, I guess, like properties that make Ethereum great. Now, there was a proposal put forward by Vitalik to increase the max blobs to 8 and the target blob rate to 4, so adding an additional 20% capacity here or something like that to the network or to blobs in order to future-proof blobs in Pectra, so because we're not going to get peer DAS until the end of next year. Now, a lot of concerns were brought up about this with regards to bandwidth requirements, especially for home stakers, where essentially blobs are quite bandwidth heavy right now, but those concerns in my mind are not really concerns, because there are multiple ways to, I guess, fix that. There are many different things that are being done at the client level right now, and there are other things that can be done within the protocol level to essentially make it so that bandwidth requirements as they exist today will be a lot lower, even with a higher blob count. So if that is really the only concern that we have with increasing the blobs on the network, then I think that that concern is not a big one, because we have ways to rectify that, we have ways to work around that, and in my opinion, we should definitely increase blobs to 4, increase the target of blobs to 4 and the max to 8 in Pectra, because if we don't do that, we'll be stuck with 3 as the target and 6 as the max until the next hard fork, which is going to be happening hopefully the end of next year, which will introduce peer DAS, which is a huge scalability upgrade. It's not just like a little bump like what we're doing here, it is a massive upgrade to blobs. But as I said, that's not being delivered in Pectra now. It is being pushed out to the next fork. And I should mention, I don't think I've covered this on the refuel before because it happened while I was away. Pectra ended up being split into 2 forks. So a bunch of EIPs got moved off of Pectra into the fork following Pectra because Pectra was just getting too big. So within Pectra, we're still going to have things like max EB, but in the fork following Pectra, things like peer DAS and EOF got moved into because they just weren't ready in time, essentially. And I still think Pectra is going to be delivered early next year, Q1 of next year, maybe late Q1 of next year, something like March. Probably makes the most sense here, but we'll have to see when peer DAS gets delivered after that, when the upgrade after Pectra goes live there. But I am strongly in favor of a blob count increase for Pectra. It's not really an if, because I think it's going to happen, but like the prerequisite to that is that the improvements to the clients are in, and the other fixes that the core devs are working on also go in as part of Pectra in order to make sure that the bandwidth requirements are lowered across the board, so that we don't lose solo stakers, we don't lose home stakers, we don't lose the we don't make it harder to verify the chain. And when it comes to bandwidth, there's also max EB. Now, max EB isn't a upgrade that will directly target bandwidth requirements. Just a refresher for those of you who may have forgotten, max EB is essentially making it so that you can stake 2048 ETH per validator instead of 32 ETH. That may have been changed to 1024 ETH per validator instead of a max of 32 ETH, but I haven't kept up to date with that because I've been away. But regardless, that is a huge increase in the max. So instead of people having to run 10 validators on 10 separate validator instances, 10 separate validators on their machine as a solo staker, if they've got 320 ETH, they can just put all of that ETH on one validator, and that will decrease bandwidth usage on their home network here, or whatever network that they're using. And then once it's done network-wide, that will reduce bandwidth across the network too. So there are various different things going into the network in order to reduce bandwidth. So essentially, a blob increase shouldn't negatively impact anything within that kind of realm. It shouldn't negatively impact solo stakers or home stakers, even if it's done within Pectra. Now, this is a nice segue into a related topic that I wanted to talk about, which is all about solo stakers generally. Now, I think that The one thing for me within Ethereum is that solo stakers should be preserved at all costs. The ability for the average person to run a full node on consumer hardware should be preserved at all costs. We shouldn't make that harder to do. But the issue is that we don't really have a strictly defined minimum hardware requirement / bandwidth requirement for, I guess, like full nodes and for home stakers. Because we say consumer hardware, and that generally means things like a laptop or a NUC or even something like a Raspberry Pi. But we haven't really defined bandwidth requirements, because so hardware is something that, most people in the world, like in first world countries, especially, they have easy access to all types of hardware. It's not like you need to go somewhere else to buy a specific piece of hardware. You can basically buy like a good SSD anywhere you live in a first world country. Even in outside of first world countries, you can buy a good SSD. You can buy a good computer. You can buy a NUC, so on and so forth. But then when it comes to bandwidth, it's a completely different discussion, because even if you've got all the money in the world, if you're in a location where you can't get fiber internet, for example, fiber optic internet, you're not getting it, right? You have to move, essentially. And obviously that is not something that we can ask of our home stakers and of our solo stakers. Just move to get better internet. No, we can't do that. So we need to define what is the minimum bandwidth requirements on the network and basically use that as a target. Right now, there is no target, really. It is basically a loosely defined thing of, well, we have these solo stakers who may have really shitty bandwidth, so we should do our best to make sure that they aren't kicked off the network, which I totally agree with, by the way. But there's a limit to that. The limit is the fact that we need to have a definition here. We can't just use that loosely defined thing as a guiding principle. So what is that definition? Well, there's been a bunch of discussion. So what is that? What are we targeting here? Well, there's been a bunch of discussions in the community around this. In terms of like hardware, we're happy with defining it as kind of consumer hardware, aka a laptop, a NUC. That's fine. We're not worried about that. But when it comes to bandwidth, I don't think there's been an answer yet. But I think that in this day and age, like in 2024, there has to be an expectation that you have to have enough, I guess, like upload speed to be able to run a full node and run a solo staker on your network, because most of it is upload bandwidth on your home network while other people are on that network as well, and be able to participate in Ethereum. Now, that exact number, I've got no idea what that is. I think today, if you were to define it based on the people with the, I guess like on the low end, it's maybe like 10 or 15 megabits per second upload bandwidth. But in my opinion, it kind of needs to be higher than that, especially as we keep adding more stuff to the network, maybe 20 or 25. And the thing is that I understand that not everyone has access to that. And as I said, like you can't just get access to that even if you've got the money to pay for it. You have to basically wait until the infrastructure is rolled out there, if it ever comes. And then there are other aspects to it as well. There's not just the fact that you can get better, even if you can get better bandwidth, there are certain ISPs around the world that will block certain connections and you can't get around that. They'll do weird things like require you to use their modem or use their router, or they won't let you connect, so on and so forth, right? So there's a lot of considerations when it comes to that there. And then some people suggested Starlink as an alternative for these people. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. There's too much. It's too much latency between the connection and between the node and the connection there. I believe that the latency is quite a long time, and it can be longer depending on where the satellite is positioned overhead, and a bunch of different factors there. So unfortunately, Starlink is not the answer for being a staker. It works for full nodes, I believe, but it is not very reliable for being a staker. It can still work, but going forward, as we're adding more things to the network, it may not end up working very well there. So we shouldn't be relying on that either. So the conversations will continue within the ecosystem, but that's just something that I figured it was worth putting on your radar, is that those discussions are happening. People are optimizing for that. They're trying to find a nice, I guess, like middle ground for everyone to agree on here, but it's definitely a conversation that's going to take a little while to play out there. But yeah, and as I mentioned before when talking about blobs, there are very, very many fixes going in to make sure that we can reduce the bandwidth requirements overall of the Ethereum network, because right now a lot of it is not needed. It's a lot of like tech debt, I guess you could say, and there's a lot of optimizations to be had, and a lot of very smart people are working on that. But we also need to define a minimum bandwidth requirement for solo stakers and home stakers Because if we don't do that, we'll just keep going in circles here. So that's it on that topic. Next topic is something related to, I guess, layer 2s. And as I said, guys, like I didn't really have an order to what I wanted to talk about today, but this is something related to layer 2s, and this has got to do with app chains. So the concept of an app chain has existed for a long time now. It's basically this concept of a chain that does one thing, it's one app that does one thing and does it well and optimizes around that. And we've had various different examples of this over the years, all the way back to things like Peercoin and Namecoin. So Namecoin was an app chain, layer 1 proof of work for domain names, for I guess you could call like an early version of ENS. And then there was Peercoin, which was the first proof of stake network. It wasn't really an app chain, but like it was trying to do one thing and do it well. And then Cosmos, the Cosmos ecosystem, basically tried to do app chains as well, where essentially there was like a Cosmos hub, and then you could have app chains that exist around it, and they would do their own thing with their own apps, and then they would interoperate with the Cosmos hub. Cosmos is still around, they're still doing things, it didn't really go anywhere. So there's always been this kind of push and pull case here of like, our app chain's bearish, our app chain's bullish, what our app chains built as roll-ups going to be different to app chains as Cosmos chains, so on and so forth. My view on this is that like, I don't know, really. I feel like app chains make sense in the context of people building apps want to have more control over their app. They want to have more control over the value generated by their app, such as the MEV value generated. They want to be able to upgrade their apps without having to rely on the underlying base layer to upgrade to support that. So for example, right now, Uniswap v4 can't launch on Ethereum L1 until a specific EIP is introduced, which I believe is going in. Sorry, it actually went in as part of Denkun. So until that went in, Uniswap v4 couldn't launch here. So when you look at it from that perspective, there is a lot of different reasons as to why people want to build app chains. And the reason why this has kind of become a discussion over the last week or so recently was because Uniswap announced Unichain, which isn't an app chain. People got confused here. Unichain is not an app chain. It is actually a general purpose rollup. It is not an app rollup. It's not just Uniswap on there. It's called Unichain, but you can deploy whatever apps you want on there, and it's going to be like essentially what they're trying to make it be is essentially a DeFi playground. Right, but it is a general purpose chain. But because people got confused, everyone started talking about app chains again. So as I said, there are a lot of different reasons why app chains can make sense, but like it's also the question of, can they overcome the network effect of a generalized chain? So for example, let's say, as I said, Unichain is a generalized chain, and let's say there is an app chain for another AMM. Let's say it's Aerodrome or something like that, or another DEX. And let's say they have their own separate app chain here, but then there's Unichain that is a generalized chain. The app chain could be successful, but it seems like there'd be a limit to how successful it could be because there's liquidity going there for that specific app. And maybe it can interoperate with other app chains and it becomes seamless in the end. But then when you have this like generalized chain, there are like 10 different apps on there. And those 10 different apps are bringing all different types of liquidity there, all different types of users. So it's this thing of like one total addressable market versus 10 total addressable markets. But then the line blows even further, because what if everything is just interoperable? What if the app chain and the generalized chain can talk to each other seamlessly, that the end user doesn't actually feel that they're on an app chain or a generalized chain? It all just feels the same to them. This is actually the one of the things behind what Infinex is building. Essentially, they're not building a chain, but they're building an interface that sits on top of all these chains, where essentially you feel like you're interacting with just one chain. And you're not. You're interacting with many different chains, whether they be L2s or L1s, but they've put an interface on top that makes it feel like you're interacting with just one chain or just one kind of hub here. So that the line gets just very, very blurry there. So the open question becomes of, okay, well, if that's the case, if everything can interoperate with each other, then isn't that more bearish for the generalized chain than the app chain? Because if everything can interoperate with each other, then the generalized chains are the ones that are actually going to be consumed by the app chains, because the app chains can, as I said, have that control over their value capture, have that control over MEV, move faster, be able to tailor their environment, but also get the benefit of sharing liquidity, of sharing users, of being seamless with every other app chain out there. So it's an open question still, but if you follow the incentives, it seems like app chains could be the thing that or in over the next few years, could be that thing that actually takes off finally after so many attempts over the years. As long as we have like a seamless user experience, I don't think people are going to complain about using them. Like if it's so seamless that you don't have to change the chain in your wallet, that you can just sit there with an interface that sits on top and you interact with all of it, and it feels just extremely simple to use, and it's great user experience, then I think that people building apps are going to opt to build app chains instead of just deploying their app to a generalized chain. Now, of course, generalized chains are still going to exist. You could do both. That's not what Uniswap is doing, but that is what Uniswap could have done, where they could have made Unichain be an app chain and then still had Uniswap exist on L1 and the various different L2s. And this is funny because this is actually a FUD vector that was born out of this, where people said, well, if Uniswap is making their own chain now, aren't they just going to focus on that and move all of their liquidity from L1 Ethereum to their own L2? Well, I mean, they could do that if they wanted to, but it doesn't really seem like it serves a purpose, because why not just grow the pie bigger? Like, why not have both? And that's what they're going to do. Because if you actually look at their strategy so far, Uniswap on L2s has continued to grow for years, while Uniswap on L1 is still the top gas guzzler. It's still being used. Uniswap V2, which is really old now, is still used by so many people because it's just, there's liquidity there, there's users there, people like using it. There are various different reasons why it's still used, of course, but it is. So there's no FUD here. There is FUD, but the FUD doesn't make any sense when it comes to this sorts of stuff. But as I said, lots of open questions around app chains, how they're going to work. But I do think that if we can have a seamless experience between the app chains, they can interoperate, they can talk to each other, people can just use them without having to worry about changing chains, worrying about bridging assets across different chains. I do think that the app chain, the construction is very appealing to apps that want to internalize all of the value accrual that their app has, instead of paying it out to MEV bots and MEV searches, instead of paying it out in gas fees and things like that. But again, a lot of open questions around that there. So that's on app chains. Now, I had another thing here with regards to ETH being money, where I basically wrote down that I believe the only defensible moat within crypto is moneyness and being a store of value. I think that maybe the defensible word is wrong. I don't think it's defensible in that, it's defensible, but it's like, it's not like impenetrable. It's like, okay, well, BTC today is worth $1.2 trillion. It is obviously the premier store of value within crypto, and it's obviously the only one that the majority of people within crypto believe is a store of value. A lot of people believe in ETH being a store of value, but the Bitcoiners don't, right? The Alt L1 people don't. Like, really, the people who believe that ETH is a store of value are the ones that are in Ethereum. So, in that sense, the BTC is today, as it exists today, is accepted as that, but in the future that can change. In the future, people can say, well, BTC isn't a store of value anymore. Like, I don't think that BTC is a digital gold. I would rather go buy this other asset as my store of value. And then slowly over time, the value of BTC gets chipped away because of that, and that moat wasn't really, it was defensible for a while, but it wasn't impenetrable. Some other asset comes along and dethrones BTC. Just like if BTC is to flip gold one day in market cap, you could say that, well, gold had a defensible store of value moat for a very long time, but it wasn't unbeatable, it wasn't impenetrable, and eventually BTC overtook it. So I guess the main point here is that it is a defensible moat, it can be a long-term defensible moat, but it is not one that can't be broken. Whereas things like, like scaling and data availability and more the tech side of things, that's not as much of a moat as people think it is. Maybe things like developer platforms, like for example, the EVM is a pretty big moat for Ethereum. Developers, the network effect of the EVM, the network effect of Solidity is a pretty big moat, but it is not that defensible because you can abstract these things away as well. Like there are various projects working on being able to essentially code in whatever language you want and compile down to the EVM or compile down to other virtual machines out there. So it's not something that you can be like, well, we're the only ones who have this. Like, for example, Ethereum can't be like, well, we're the only ones who have the EVM. It's like, well, no, Tron has the EVM, Binance Smart Chain has it, Phantom had it, Avalanche C Chain has it, one of the C chains have it, or this C chain, I should say, has it. And the same goes for Solana, like the SVM. SVM. The Eclipse is coming to Ethereum as an L2 and is using the SVM. So that stuff is not something that is defensible. It's not like a lock-in. It's not like really a moat for any particular ecosystem. But the moneyness, the store of value property of the asset is, because it's very, very hard to pick that up. You can't be like, okay, well, I'm going to take ETH's store of value and monetary properties and the value that it gets from that and just take it from ETH and put it on some other asset. That's not how it works. It takes a long time to do that, and it is something that requires a substantial amount of work for it to happen, and it requires a lot of things to go right. It requires a lot of luck. It's a lot less objectively defined. It's very much subjectively defined. So that's the way I think about defensibility in crypto. So I think that, as I said before, there's only positives when it comes to making sure that ETH can keep going up in value, not just because if you hold ETH you make more money, but because it is better for Ethereum overall if ETH is worth more. And that is one of the strongest held beliefs that I have within the ecosystem, almost as strong as my belief that if something isn't decentralized, it doesn't deserve to exist over the longer term. But that's a story for another day there, because I've repeated myself many times about that. So yeah, I'm just going through my notes here. I think there was basically, one last thing I wanted to talk about here, which was AI agents. So I put a couple of tweets out about this, and it's a little bit controversial, where people were like, well, aren't AI agents just bots, and shouldn't we be like wary of bots using things on chain, and shouldn't we not count them as real users, and so on and so forth? And I'm like, look, I'm partial to those arguments. I do think that bots result in a lot of spam on chain. They're not exactly real, I guess like defined as real users as we define today, because we define real users as humans. But if you actually look at where most of the activity across all chains comes from, it's already bots. Like, no one's sitting there every day doing hundreds of transactions a day. Or maybe some people are, I should say. Sorry, not no one. But like, the average person is not going to be sitting there every day doing hundreds, thousands of transactions a day on these networks. They might do a few here and there. Maybe you do a swap one day, that's one transaction. Maybe you put some money into Aave, or maybe you go provide liquidity on Uniswap or whatever it is. That's a couple transactions there. Maybe you do some payments on chain during the day, few more transactions. So maybe you do like 20 transactions on a good day. Maybe on a normal day you do like 5, if that. That's nothing, right? Like, if we're talking about scaling this up to like hundreds of thousands and millions of transactions per second, doing 20 transactions per day as a human doesn't even put a dent in that. So where do you think all of that other transactional activity is coming from? Well, it's already coming from bots. It's coming from bots doing various different things. A lot of it is MEV bots. And so it's not a leap to say that AI agents, an evolution of the dumb bots that we have today, are going to be the ones that are the main users of the on-chain economy. Because I believe that a true AI agent, if their task and their objective task is to make as much money as possible, the only way for them to do that in the world today without being stopped is by using decentralized technologies, is by using decentralized money. And I think that they're going to prefer the Ethereum ecosystem and ETH as an asset to do that, because ETH is the best on-chain money as it exists today. Ethereum is the most decentralized blockchain as it exists today. And if their goal is to make as much money as possible, then they're not going to care about the fees. So they're going to be like the main users of L1 Ethereum. And maybe they go and use other chains and go pillage other lands of money on the other chains there. But in terms of like a home base, why would they risk having their money anywhere else? You got to remember here, these AI agents are not subjective. They're objective. They're not going to be like, well, I want to keep my money on this chain because like I'm really tribal about this chain. Like I love this chain. No, they're going to keep their money where where it makes the most sense to keep it, on the most decentralized chain where they can actually still do stuff with it. People, I guess, replied to my tweets with some comments saying, well, BTC is the most decentralized asset. Bitcoin is the most decentralized chain. They'll just keep their money there. It's like, yeah, okay, but like, why would they do that when they can't do anything on chain with that money? And also, to get back to Bitcoin from other chains, even Ethereum, they have to go through like a trusted bridge. So I feel like if they're going to be doing that, they'd rather just stay and keep their money on Ethereum where they can do stuff with it without having to bridge. Like they could actually just live on Ethereum L1. They don't have to bridge anywhere, right? But then if there's stage 2 decentralization layer 2s and rollups that they can use. They'd rather use those than these other chains out there. So I'm trying to think about it like a machine would think about it, like an objective way, not in a subjective way where people say, oh, I'm not going to use that chain because it belongs to that tribe. Like, no, AI agents don't think about that. Even if they're programmed to think like that, they probably program that out of them, because thinking like that is not conductive to profit maximalism, right? Like, if you're a profit maxi, whether you're a human or a robot, being a profit maxi means not being tribal about things, not being emotional about things, using whatever you need to and doing whatever you need to stack the most amount of money possible. At least that's the way I think about it there. But outside of the money thing as well, I just think that machines generally are going to continue to be the main users of everything on chain. Humans will be the minority, and that's fine. That's how it already works within the TradFi ecosystem. Like, most of the trading that happens on the stock market is done by bots, right? It's not humans sitting there every day trading. High frequency trading is not humans. We can't even think at that level. We can't think at like the millisecond, the 100 millisecond or less level, or even less than that. High frequency trading is like a few milliseconds. So we can't think at that level, whereas these machines can, and they do, and that's why they dominate in that area there. But yeah, I think that was the last topic I had on my list to talk about. There were some other topics, if I bring it up on my phone here, that some people in the Discord wanted me to talk about. If I can quickly bring it up and maybe talk about these ones. There was Lucid Eyes, who asked about the recent airdrop meta, protocols launching tokens, paying 5% to Binance just to get listed, bad tokenomics across the board, etc., and so on and so forth. I guess my general comment on this is that I don't know if it's just got to do with airdrops. It more so got to do with the fact that the way tokens are launched today is really shit. And that's to do mostly with regulations. You can't do ICOs legally. You can't distribute most of the tokens to people legally because even airdrops are considered illegal in the US. You can't basically sell tokens to anyone but accredited investors, which basically means that you're selling to VCs and selling to already rich people. So the whole, thing of issuing a token is just a complete and total mess today. There are some projects trying to fix this. I know that Echo, which is Kobe's project, is trying to do fundraising as part of like groups and basically trying to make it so that these groups get the deal flow. I don't think that really fixes the tokens as much as it fixes the fundraising side of things. When it comes to actually fixing the tokens themselves, it's a much bigger thing. And I think that as long as the market keeps rewarding these projects for having like low floats and tokens that are locked for years, then people are going to keep doing it. I mean, you just need to go look at CoinGecko and look at some of these tokens. They have like 5-10% circulating, and yet their fully diluted valuation is in the billions. So the market is rewarding that. And the market cap's like tiny compared to it, but the VCs don't care. They're up so much on their investments, so they're going to keep investing these things. And then the project having a high valuation is good for the project, so they're going to keep doing this. So yeah, tokens are just broken altogether. Airdrop or not, it's just broken. I don't know what the fix is here, guys. Maybe the market needs to stop rewarding this stuff. I know that the market has tried to offset this with things like meme coins, but meme coins are just as bad. If people actually are naive enough to think that meme coins aren't infested with insiders, then honestly, they deserve to lose their money. Like, in what world are the insiders not taking advantage of the meme coin mania? You can actually see this playing out just on Twitter. The meme coins that do the best are the ones that get the most attention. And how do you think they get attention? Well, it's the big accounts on Twitter shilling them. And why do you think these big accounts are doing this? It's because they're working within their group, their friendship groups, to set these narratives, to set this stuff up, to shill this stuff all together, so that they funnel people into these things. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, look, this guy called this meme coin. It's like, no, he didn't. He just tweeted about it when it was worth basically nothing. And if you do that enough times and you've got a big enough following, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of, because this person tweeted about this coin, it went up. And then people will credit that person with getting a good call. But the thing is that their call wasn't good. It was just them making the thing pump. And that's just the transparent ones. There are so many things happening in the background, guys. There are so many groups involved with this sorts of stuff, and they're using every trick in the book to make sure that you are the exit liquidity for them and that they can make as much money as possible. And it's not just on chain, it's also on Twitter. There are so many bots. Like, you can't be silly enough to go on Twitter, look at the shilling of these meme coins, go through the list of people that have, well, you used to be able to do this, not now, of accounts that have liked the tweets and think that that's organic engagement. No, there is obviously a group of organic engagement from real people. There's a bunch of that on around meme coins, but most of it is very botted. Most of it is very insider. And the cabal meme, that's not a meme, guys. It's true. There are literally cabals of people making these things go up. There's very low liquidity, getting suckers in and just taking their money. So no, I don't believe meme coins are an answer to this at all. And also, meme coins aren't tied to anything. They're literally just like gambling playthings. They're not tied to any specific project. We've done away with that now. They used to try to be, but now the market's like, well, these things are just like whatever. Like, there's a picture of a dog on it. There was a picture of a frog on it. There's one that's making a parody of like the S&P 500 called SPX that went up a lot recently. Like, the market is rewarding that. Now, the market loves to reward the stupidest things, and the market is the market. It can do whatever it wants. But that's my general view on tokens, I think, is that like nothing's going to change if the market keeps rewarding it. Like, there's no incentive for it to change in that world, because even if you think it sucks, which I do, it doesn't matter, because the people who are getting the benefit from it are being rewarded by the market for it. So they're not going to change their ways, and the projects aren't going to change their ways either, because then the VCs won't give them money and they won't be able to fund their project because they can't do an ICO. It's a mess. It's a complete mess here. So that was from Lucid Eyes there. There was something from Ben Adams, who's from the Discord channel as well, who wanted me to go bigger picture on why we are here within the Ethereum ecosystem and what we are trying to achieve and why, and what the kind of guiding light here is. I mean, I think I've done this a lot of times on the refuel before, so maybe it's not worth me repeating it here, but the TLDR is that we're just trying to build a better system for the world, and not just a financial system. We're trying to build a better coordination system for the world. We're trying to upgrade the existing system, not necessarily replace it, but upgrade it with better mechanisms, make it fairer, make it more transparent, make it more open. And I think that is really the summary of what Ethereum is trying to be. And obviously being decentralized falls into that. But yeah, as I've said, I've talked about this a lot on the refuel before, so I don't want to repeat myself here, but still something to think about. And I'll probably talk about it in the future anyway, because it's something that I obviously care deeply about there. And there was one final one from Yabish. I can't believe I said that on the refuel. That's just their name on Discord, asking about my 2025 predictions and expectations around probably, I guess, like the market generally and what the election means for and politics and stuff like that. Well, I don't know if I give predictions here, more so like thoughts on what can happen. The number one thing that I think is that the election doesn't mean anything. I don't think Harris or Trump winning, it doesn't matter. I honestly don't think it matters for crypto. I think what matters for crypto more than anything is just getting new money in, and that can come from various different places. I don't think that more new money is going to come in if, Harris wins over Trump or Trump wins over Harris. I honestly don't think that it's going to make a material difference there. I do think that generally big things like US elections are a overhang on the markets, where the market doesn't like uncertainty, so it basically just sits in a holding pattern until that uncertainty passes, and then once there is certainty, as in who won the election, then the market moves on from that, and that's fine. As I said, it doesn't matter who won, it's more about like the uncertainty around who is going to win. In terms of like who would be better for crypto, guys, I've given my opinion on this before, and I don't want to delve too far into the politics here, but I think a good way to think about this is that if you believe everything that Trump has said about what he's going to do if he wins for crypto, if you believe that he is actually going to do what he said he's going to do, then he would be better than Harris for crypto, objectively speaking. But the thing is that you have to take him on his word. You have to take a politician on their word. And when you take a politician on their word, you're usually let down. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle that politician is on, they all lie a lot of the time, right? So then you can look at, I guess, like Harris and be like, okay, well, Harris has barely really mentioned crypto. She's been part of the administration that's been really hostile towards crypto. So we aren't just looking at what she says or doesn't say. We're looking at what she's done and hasn't done. But then there's a debate about how much power the vice president actually has. A lot of people believe that the vice president is really just an insurance policy for the president. It's like a figurehead, essentially. It's not someone that has any real material impact on what the administration does. So if you buy into that angle, then you could make the positive argument that, well, Harris hasn't been able to do anything because she's got no power, which I think is a little bit of cope, to be honest. But then if you take the other angle where you say, well, no, that's bullshit. Like, Harris is vice president. She should be able to get into Biden's ear, get into the ear of other Democrats and change their approach towards crypto. Then you can basically say, well, she's done fuck all. So she's probably going to do nothing if she wins, nothing good for crypto. If she wins, more than likely it's going to continue. The Democrats are going to continue to be hostile towards crypto. So then her winning would be bad. But again, I go back to what I said. Whereas like on net, I don't actually think it matters for the market. Maybe it matters for things within crypto, like more companies being sued if Harris wins by the SEC versus if Trump was to win, so on and so forth. So if you think about it from that perspective and you look about it from that perspective, then obviously you would think that Trump winning would be better for crypto. But like in my opinion, I mean, as someone who's not even in the US and isn't a US citizen, can't vote in the election, has no horse in this race, I honestly don't think it matters. Like who wins for crypto. I think that the uncertainty once it's passed is the main thing, and I think that what matters more than anything is global liquidity, really, because liquidity is the lifeblood of markets, as I've discussed before. Rates coming down, market gets more bullish because rates are coming down, there's more liquidity in it. That's what matters over anything else, really. And that to me is the only macro thing that matters. People talk about all these other macro things, and I've said before, I don't think that they matter. I think the only thing that matters in macro is liquidity cycles, because liquidity is the lifeblood of markets. The more liquidity you have, the more the markets can react to that, and the better it is. Less liquidity you have, the more, I guess, like bearish markets are, because people are preserving capital, preserving money, and they, especially if rates are high, they'd rather go into a risk-free treasuries than put money into risky assets like crypto, right, which have not performed very well in a high rate environment, other than small pockets here and there. So that's my general view on the political side there. But in terms of like my predictions for 2025, I do think it's going to be a more bullish year. Generally, I do think crypto is gearing up for another kind of bullish period from here. Don't know what that looks like. Does it mean that we're going to have a true bull market where all this new money comes in and we have like a blow off top, and we go into another bear market, not this like little mini bull market we had, but this little mini bear market that we've had? Maybe, I don't know. As I've said before, I do believe that the traditional 4-year cycle is mostly broken. I don't think it's going to strictly follow that anymore, but we're going to have to see. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the prices are going to be like. I still think that ETH can go 15K plus by the top of this cycle, but that's just a prediction that I've made. And I've stated before many, many times that I don't think that you should take that prediction as anything other than a prediction. I don't think that you should be like, oh, well, Sassel said that ETH is going to 15K. I'm going to wait till 15K to sell. No, you have to have your own targets. You have to have your own take profit plan. And as I said before, please take profits, guys. Like, don't just like ride the whole thing up and then ride it down again. There's no worse feeling than that, honestly. But that's my general kind of take there. But I think that's going to be it for now. I think I've gone, like an hour and 40 minutes or something like that. Not the 3 hours that I kind of shit posted about in Discord that I was going to do. But I think that covers most of the stuff that people wanted me to talk about. But as always, you can just ping me on Discord or Twitter. And if you want me to talk about something specifically on the refuel, I will. But going forward from here, we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming of me covering the latest updates in the Ethereum ecosystem. And I think this week I'll do that on Thursday, maybe Friday. And then next week, it'll be that Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence until I go to DevCon next month and then Japan in January. But I'll keep you guys up to date on that there. But yeah, I think that's it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next time. Thanks everyone.